Bismillah, in the next section of this chapter, Zakat, the great Imam al-Bahuti rahimahullah ta'ala talks about currency, and the traditional currency during the time of the Prophet ﷺ was actually gold and silver. So you have two things really. You have gold and silver, which could be, for example, unrefined, or you have gold and silver which has been made into coinage. So these two things are essentially treated the same, with some exceptions to quality, etc. And we'll talk about that. He says 2.5% is due on both pure, i.e. unadulterated gold. If it reaches 20 mithqals, 20 mithqals is approximately 85 grams, and silver, if it reaches 200 dirhams, 200 dirhams is approximately 594 grams. And so here we're talking about pure, the pure elements, unadulterated. So today, gold in the marketplace, that would be like your 24 karat gold. When it starts to degrade to like different carats of lower value, it means that there are other minerals, other types of metals in there to harden the gold. And also silver, the purest you'll find on the market is what they would call 0.999, which means 99.9% pure silver, with trace elements of other minerals in there. It starts to degrade, of course, and so what we're looking for is the nisab, or the weight, if you will, of pure gold or silver. And you can see gold is 85 grams, silver is 594 grams. This is based on the hadith of Ibn Umar and Aisha radiallahu anhum. When they related, he used to take from every 20 mithqals half a mithqal. And the hadith of Anas, when he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, and silver is 2.5%. Zakat must be paid on that which is unadulterated. But if it is adulterated, it means have the other elements in it, other minerals, like I mentioned. When its pure amount reaches the nisab, then you have to pay the zakat, essentially. So you'll be taking into consideration the actual purity of those elements, either gold or silver. It says they, both gold and silver, are to be combined based on amounts and not value. So here, meaning when you're trying to reach the nisab, you have a little bit of gold and you have a little bit of silver. These aren't treated as separate entities. Rather, they are both currencies, and so they can be combined in order to reach that nisab. And this is by amounts, not values, basically by the weights. And the example that's given is 10 mithqals of gold, and we know that 20 is the nisab, coupled with 100 dirhams of silver, and we know 200 dirhams is the nisab for silver. So basically 10 mithqals of gold is half the nisab of gold, and 100 dirhams of silver is half the nisab of silver. And so two halves, if you take them, two halves, you put them together and you get a whole. And this is to complete the nisab and paid according to their value in the form of either gold or silver. So here you take the value and you pay it in the form of either that, gold or silver. You don't pay it in some other form. It says the value of merchandise is combined with them based on respective value, meaning 10 mithqals of gold and 10 mithqals worth of merchandise, for example. So you would have 20 mithqals of gold. And then if you had an additional, so if you only had 10 mithqals of gold, half of the nisab for gold, and then you had commercial commodities or merchandise, which were equivalent in value, the market value of that particular time when the zakat was due, equivalent to 10 mithqals of gold, then you would be able to combine them to reach the nisab of 20. He says it is permissible for a male to have a silver ring because the Prophet ﷺ had a silver ring. So here you can see we're changing the subject a little bit. This is appropriate here because we're talking about gold and silver. And now we're basically talking about some exceptions to the rule that you should not have gold and silver vessels, which we talked about in the chapter of wudu. And now we're talking about the exceptions to those things like jewelry, and we'll also come to understand, do we have to pay zakat on our jewelry? So here the first thing is for a male to have a silver ring. The Prophet ﷺ had a silver ring. He says it's best to turn the ring stone, whatever is typically on the front of the ring, inward towards the palm, and preferred to wear it on the left hand. It is disliked wearing it on the pointer finger or the middle finger, as well as to engrave Allah's name, some verses of the Quran, etc. on it. It says if someone has multiple rings, zakat is not voided for that which is uncustomarily, unless they are for the child or the servant. So basically what that means is, in the madhab, zakat is not due on jewelry. Unless, here he's saying, that you have an abundant amount of these rings that are uncustomary, meaning it seems excessive to the point that that's not normal, and it would appear perhaps that you're hiding your wealth, or you're hiding your zakatable wealth in jewelry so as not to pay. So zakat is not voided from that which uncustomarily, meaning the amount, multiple rings, which is uncustomary, unless they are for his child or his servant. The following silver items are also permitted. A sword's pommel. The sword's pommel is the bottom part of the sword, because Anas noted that the pommel of the Prophet's sword was silver. A belt's decor, the belt that you wear around your waist, and this is in armor, etc. They may have some decoration, some decorative elements to it that are made from silver, which was worn by the companions. Is something they wore, etc., such as the decor of armor, helmets, the khuf, the greave. The greave is a type of armor that goes around the shin. It doesn't have a foot to it, so it's not like a boot. It's missing the foot part. The khuf would be that part, and that would have some decoration made from silver on it, and also the sword scabbard, which is kind of like the sheath of the sword, or the material which holds it together. If that's made out of silver, that's permissible. And a golden sword's pommel, which is something that Umar radiallahu anhu possessed, and whatever else is necessary, such as a nose. This may seem strange that someone would have a golden nose, but it was reported by Abu Dawood that Arfaj ibn As'ad, his nose was severed on the day of Kulab, and it was replaced with a silver one, which began to become odorous. And so the Prophet ﷺ ordered him to fasten a golden nose instead. And similar to that is dental work. I know that some people, in some areas of the world, some parts of the world, they still use gold for dental work as opposed to enamel. And there may be other necessities which you would need to use gold, even for medical reasons, etc., and that's permissible to do. He says it is permitted for women to wear both gold or silver according to custom. Those are things like necklaces, bracelets, pendants, crowns, etc. The Prophet ﷺ said gold and silk have been permitted for the women of my nation and prohibited for the men, even if it is excessive, meaning women, if they own an excessive amount of jewelry, it's still permissible for them. It says both men and women are permitted to wear gems. Those are gems like rubies, sapphires, etc. That's permissible for both men and women. Wearing rings of iron, brass, bronze, and lead are, however, disliked. The reasoning behind this is that those types of metals are used in the description of the punishment of the people of hell. So that should be avoided in this life, as it is hoped to be avoided in the next. He says there is no zakat due on permissible male or female jewelry intended for usage or lending. All right, so here's the question on many people's minds is, I have a bunch of jewelry. My wife has a bunch of jewelry. Do I have to pay zakat on that jewelry? No, there is no zakat due on permissible male or female jewelry. We talked about the silver rings for men, and then all of the other types of gold or silver jewelry for women. As long as it's intended for usage, meaning it's personal, it's intended, even if you don't end up using it, you don't end up actually using it, it is intended for usage or lending. And this is the same even if a man were to possess women's jewelry for the purpose of lending it to them, or vice versa. Like a woman would possess men's jewelry, and her intent for having that was to lend it out perhaps to the men in her family or something of that nature. unless, of course, they were fleeing from making that payment. In that case, you have to pay zakat. You can't go purchasing a bunch of jewelry in hopes to avoid paying zakat. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, there is no zakat due on jewelry. This hadith reported by him, alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, it is obligatory on that which is impermissible, meaning paying zakat is obligatory on gold and silver, which is impermissible. These are things like golden or silver dishes, flatware, etc. Or that which has been allocated to rent or has been prepared for expenditure so long as it reaches the nisab. If it has been prepared to sell, it is treated like merchandise, and zakat is paid on its market value. And that concludes this particular portion of the chapter.